Technology, it's such an exciting time in our world. It is transformational. It is creating new opportunities and changing everything about our society and how it works. But how do communities, especially small communities like TEDxStouffville and other communities in York Region, how do you take advantage of those opportunities that technology is creating? How do you harness that and use it to create places that are agile enough to respond to opportunities, that bring people together and create resilient communities to adapt to these changes that technology brings? I'm a geek. I love technology. I love thinking about where it's going. I love the fact that 3D printers are here and you don't need to buy a screwdriver. You can print one, and then when you're done with it, you can recycle the material and print another tool. Whether it's cloud computing or smart grid technologies or your smartphone that ends up tracking your health data, there are things that are happening that are fundamentally changing our world around us. And so today I want to share with you some secrets that I've learned about, is it the tools, is it the technology, is it the changes, or is it the secret sauce that I've discovered, which is it's about people. It's about new ways of working together collaboratively in communities to be adaptive to these changes, to be able to be agile, recognize those opportunities, harness resources, and pull your community together to take advantage of those opportunities. And these technologies that I'm talking about in terms of changing the world, they're changing things like our long-established business models. Think about the printing industry. That's a whole industry that's undergoing major sea changes. The business models don't work anymore. Broadcast is going through the same thing. But it's not just our businesses it's changing our society. Our traditional institutional frameworks are breaking down under this democratization, this devolution of power. And that's both threatening, but it also creates opportunities. And so the challenge is, how do we respond as a community? It's changing us. I watch how my kids interact with technology, and they think differently than we do. They process information differently than we do. It's changing us, how we communicate, how we learn, how we think. And if it's changing us as individuals, it's changing our communities. How could it not? So the question isn't if we need to change in our communities or when, it's how are we going to address this change? Because I tell you, there's one new adage to the truth of death and taxes being the only certainties, and that is that technology will continue to change at an exponential rate, and it will continue to take us in directions that we don't know yet what the impact will be. It's not a question of standing still, though. How are we going to move? How do we harness it? So I want to share with you some examples from my work and show you how I think it's going to go. About 3.5 years ago, we brought together a very unusual group of stakeholders: our hospital, our library, our chamber, our town, and our local municipal hydro company. And the topic of the day was, what are we going to do in our community to transition to a knowledge-based economy? Because we'd been hit by the downturn in the economy, we'd lost some of their manufacturing, and we knew that even if the manufacturing sector recovered, it was never going to come back the way that it had been before. And in that discussion, we uncovered that we shared common goals. We discovered that the hospital was looking at a video conferencing network, and so was the chamber and the library, for very different reasons, but they had the same needs. The town and the municipal hydro were sharing common interests in a GIS system. And so we started to say, instead of each of us separately doing these things, let's pool our resources together and we'll have a greater impact. And that was a very unusual dialogue. Most communities can't get those stakeholder organizations at the same table together, let alone to open up their books and talk about where are you putting your IT dollars this year? What capital expenditures are you making? But because we'd had those conversations, when an opportunity came up on very short notice for federal funding, it was a 2-week notice to submit a grant proposal. But we'd already had the conversations, we'd already identified the projects, and we were ready to submit our application. we were able to leverage across the stakeholder groups $500,000 that had already been committed in their budgets for their IT spends. We leveraged that into another $2.1 million from the federal government to build out an innovative project called Shared Digital Infrastructure. Now, I can tell you about all the cool technology that we did, the video conferencing network, and we did a digitization lab, and we unlocked 125 years of local culture and history by digitizing our newspapers that had been on microfilm and made it open to the world. But here was the interesting thing about the project, and it had nothing to do with the technology. The original project was 12 months. When the government told us that we'd been granted the award, they said, oh, but by the way, you have to do it in 5 months. So we had a choice. Do we say no, or do we go for the gusto? And we went for it, and amazingly, you have to think about what actually happened here. 5 very different organizations. Culturally, governance-wise, like night and day, a hospital and a chamber, a library and a town. And across those partners, we all had execution and delivery responsibilities. In 5 months, we hired 60 people. We did 3 competitive procurements, 2 from the town and 1 from the hospital. We shared our resources on the warranty and service support. We deployed 6 IT projects, and we did it on time, under budget, and we did it without detailed signed partner agreements. We worked on trust and openness and communication. The real value of that project and that experience was that after we recovered, took a week to breathe, we came back together and every single partner said, that was valuable. We need to do this again. So even without the funding there, all those stakeholder groups said, we need to do this again. And we were able to generate a list of more than 20 projects, essential projects to our community that had common objectives between at least 2 of those stakeholder organizations. It was a powerful, transformative experience, and it showed that working outside of our traditional leadership frameworks, we were able to get something significant done in the community. Now, out of that conversation, one of the realizations we came to was that the infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, is that essential component to allow communities to leverage technology. We have a big challenge in Canada. We're falling far, far, far behind on our technology infrastructure. Communities around the world are doing 100 megabit networks. Google's building gigabit communities, and we're farther and farther away. And this gap is exacerbating our competitiveness and our ability to be innovative and our productivity indexes, and we're seeing that in reports, global reports around the world. Broadband is a difficult issue to talk about. It's technology, it's boring, it's kind of complex, and for those of you that know me affectionately, I'm now known in the region as the Broadband lady because I go around talking to people about it all the time. But it is an important issue, and Suvi Lindén, who was Minister of Communications for Finland in 2010, realized how vitally important broadband was to the future prosperity of her country. And she led the charge to get legislation passed declaring broadband a human right, as essential as food and water and shelter. Access to knowledge was as essential. And so I look to our traditional leadership frameworks to take this issue on and make it better. And I did the rounds of the local councils. Well, I had a very eye-opening experience. So as I'm waiting to do my deputation to a municipal council on the strategic importance of broadband, I waited 2 hours while the councillors debated CAT licenses. What does this tell me? This tells me our traditional frameworks are not going to get us where we need to go. Now, to be fair to councillors, that's what the people who elect them call them about. They call them about their garbage not being picked up. They call them about snow not being removed and their neighbor's cat in their backyard. So we needed to create a new model of leadership to drive this issue forward. So we pulled together from the community, not only our stakeholder organizations, but people that were passionate, that knew this issue, understand the importance of it, and were willing to give their time and energy to drive this forward. This group was able to bring the municipalities together and the region, and we're in the process right now of doing a broadband feasibility study, and this is going to help our region to move forward. I also want to share with you an impact story. So there's a local company, digital media company, working at the leading edge of virtual gaming, global company in terms of their clients, and they won a number of contracts. They're going to go from 10 people to 50 people. But they needed an ultra-fast broadband connection. And what they heard from the carrier was, it'll take us 8 months and it'll cost you thousands of dollars to get in construction costs. And so this company was going to pick up roots and move. They were going to leave the region, and 50 jobs to go with them because of the lack of access to the broadband infrastructure. Well, and this is a generational thing. The mother of the CEO said, I'm going to call the mayor. I'm going to tell the mayor why our company is leaving the town. And thank goodness she did. Because the mayor, having been part of this shared digital infrastructure project, having heard the broadband lady at the council deputations, knew who to call to mobilize our community. And incredibly, it was the hospital and the chamber and the town working together to put a solution in place. And we saved that company, and we saved 50 jobs. High value, high paying, advanced technology jobs that are an attractor for youth. That's why broadband's important for communities. But another example of collaboration and how it can change things, we need to help our businesses and our organizations adopt technology to be more productive and effective and efficient. And it's a difficult challenge. Canadian companies are actually lagging behind the world in that as well. So this concept of how do we help people understand the power and the potential of the technology? How do we mobilize ideas? How do we inspire action in our community? And we were able to build a partnership that's very unique. So it's 9 municipalities, the economic development officers, and in fact, TEDxStouffville is a key champion for us on this. 9 chambers of commerce who usually compete with each other. The small business enterprise centers, post-secondary institutions, and private sector organizations to do an amazing business innovation conference. And this has been so successful. We've been able to attract key sponsors and keynote speakers that we would never be able to otherwise, because the communities have come together. We've aggregated the markets. We can reach more than 45,000 businesses, and we can achieve something that we couldn't individually. And again, the key learning there is the organizations recognize that they can do more together than they can on their own. And one last example, our hospital wants to explore this concept of a hospital without walls and build out into community, build a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship within their hospital. How do they do that? Well, they had a facility that was underutilized, and they were looking for engagement with the community to say, maybe we can do an innovation center, a community-based innovation center. We'll interact with the youth, and we'll support doctors. We'll create a place where physicians, clinicians, programmers, engineers, designers can come together and create new solutions to take our community forward. And so that, again, is a unique partnership, non-traditional, with the chamber and the town and the hospital to make something happen. And very interesting as well, we went to the community and said, can you help us? We don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on outside consultants and wait 2 years to do a business case. We want to do this now. We want this launched immediately. And businesses stepped forward and said, I'll give you equipment, I'll landscape the outside, I'll give you paint for the inside, I'll decide the interior of the building. And all of a sudden it became a community project. So these examples I've shared with you are ways that it's a new leadership in the community. It's a different type of leadership, needs new skills. It's what I call servant leadership. And what are the aspects of those collaboration? It's open. You have to work together. You have to trust. You have to be able to pivot. So on a particular opportunity, it made sense for the library to lead. On a different opportunity, it made sense for the hospital to lead. But you have to have that ecosystem, that ability to pivot and move. Our first speaker of the day, Danielle, talked about risk. You can't innovate unless you're willing to take risk. And when technology is changing so quickly that you really don't know where it's going from point A to point B, you have to be willing to zigzag to get there. It's not a failure if you take it and you build on it and you celebrate the success, as Danielle said. So my challenge to you here today is to think differently about you and your organization and your role in the community. Just because you're not a traditional player in economic development or technology doesn't mean that you can't change things for your community, that you can't help set the path. The theme today was about shining a light on changing communities. And my challenge to you is unleash the light that's already within your communities through people's experience, passion, expertise, and capabilities to think out of the box, to find new solutions to the challenges that's presented, and embrace technology not as a threat, but as opportunities for growth and prosperity. Thank you.